We're supposed to be doing a read-along event. Well, we are doing a read-along event for Soul Survivors, but I stopped because I started overthinking everything because I wrote this forever ago, and the dystopian aspect of this is slowly coming true, except now it's suddenly not as slow, and it's literally following step by step almost of what happens, and I feel terrible about it. So let's talk about it. If you don't know me, I'm River Kai. I'm an LGBTQ plus author and artist. I'm also disabled, so I write characters who share those identities with me. Not the exact ones always. I like to switch it up a bit, but usually the stories follow trauma survivors finding true love for the first time and usually going through their own healing journey internally and or through this relationship. They're finding it easier to trust again, things like that. So I love writing about those topics, and of course when writing about a dystopian thriller book that comes into play a lot because a lot of things that happen in thrillers and dystopian ones in particular about things that can happen in real life that can also be damaging feeling. Some of you might have heard some of this backstory already, so I'm going to speed through this. Basically, this was a webcomic, thriller webcomic originally. Then I decided it was not in the right order. I wanted to change things up, change the characters, the lore, everything to flesh it out. And it was meant to act as a warning, but now I feel like it has evolved into a playbook of what is happening, including the main antagonists of this story being neo-Nazis taking over the US and militarizing things, all this stuff. Obviously, I feel like personally, this was like no question as to a possible future, but originally I wasn't thinking that it was supposed to be what would have to happen, like it's being forced to happen right now, and it's making me super uncomfortable. So when it comes to writing a book, I do want it to be somewhat of an escape from reality and cathartic. And maybe that's also why I originally wrote this book. I wanted it to feel like, okay, these characters can survive this. It's literally called Soul Survivors. And it's supposed to be like, even if the worst things happen and we go along the worst paths, that there's still a way through together. That's part of why I was like, okay, maybe I should do the opposite of what I wanted to do, because I spent forever writing this book. It got multiple rejections that were terrible. It almost made me not publish this book, but I decided to publish it on my own because I just had this sinking feeling that it was going to be too late if I kept waiting. And I don't know like how true that is, or if there is a right timing per se to publish something like this. But now that I feel like things are actually happening more and more, and even before this was published, I felt like, oh God, things are happening more and more that I was writing about, that it does seem less of like a warning anymore. And I don't want that to be true. I don't want that. I don't want my dystopian book to come true out of all books that I have written. Like, at least give us some werewolves that are willing to be spicy in the forest with me, consensually. Anyway, that's a little bit too much information. Really though, why not that? Why did we have to go down the neo-Nazi path? Anyway, I feel like this book doesn't cover as many things as I wish it did in that aspect. Like, it's not really intended to be on the political side, as focused on that side as much as like explaining what these characters go through and how they manage to survive things. Because I do feel like a lot of times within our individual perspectives, it does feel more on that side of it. Like, you're like in your own eyes seeing the impacts of how you're impacted by things and the people directly around you, hopefully seeing how they're impacted by things. And so it feels less like, if you're not focused on the political world, that your whole world is in that world, if that makes sense. So I didn't want to make it about that and make it more of like the backdrop so that I could focus on these survivors' experiences and emotions as the central topic. Okay, like bringing us back to the present, I have published this book. Last year when I published it, it was right before the election, 2.5 weeks before, on October 15th, 2024. And I felt like that was terrible timing because I felt like this had a lot of momentum. People were being really supportive. And then it was like, oh, this is now too real. But then at the same time, I know that I have OCD and I worry about those things. I worry about disturbing people. Like, that's not really my intention, but of course with thrillers, that's also part of the point sometimes. Like, people want to feel those uncomfortable emotions, and it's a good way to explore that in a fictional setting. But I've really struggled, and I don't know if I have the answer to this. I've really struggled with handling this as an author and knowing how much to promote this, and I should be letting the readers decide, I think, honestly, on what they're willing to work with. And part of what I'm probably running into more is that I have a lot of romance readers who like that type of escape, even if I've seen a lot of overlap between the genres of romance and thrillers, and this book has a lot of romance in it. Like, a lot of people who've read it and myself will say it's probably 50-50 mixed with both. But I started to develop this perspective that maybe I wrote something that was too much, too intense, even though I've definitely read things that are more extreme. I think that it just felt a little bit on the nose as to what is happening right now. And for a lot of people, that's a little too much when the tactic is overwhelmed by people who are causing chaos within, especially, well, across the world, honestly. And I was feeling bad about potentially contributing to that. But I think it's hard to, and maybe it's a little selfish to think that I can control that, because it's really not up to me how others feel, and I can't really, like, I can write something that I think is not intended to be harmful to the best of my ability, but I can't really decide how people receive it outside of just, to the best of my ability, making it feel like it isn't going to cause harm to already marginalized groups. I feel like at the time of writing it, that is what I did. Who knows what we'll think in the future? We're always evolving socially. When it comes to something like this, like, I'm seeing proof I'm seeing proof that people want to read predictive dark things. That's what's really popular right now, actually, and trending. In when, like, even when you go to a bookstore like Powell's in Portland, because I live in the Pacific Northwest, and they have their like top sellers for right now, and they are nonfiction that is warning about fascism. It's like The Parable of the Sower, which is talking about another dystopian future and has been very predictive in an interesting way. And I don't even think that my book gets gory or anything, and it's okay that those books do, because that's what you expect. But for some reason, I feel like, and maybe that's why I wanted to share this with you, like, I don't know if the purpose of this video makes sense, but I wanted to share with you from my perspective, while I'm still figuring this out, of how I'm really feeling about this and what I'm going to do about it eventually, because I did want to originally do a read-along with everyone so that we could read through this and chat about it, and maybe that would help me feel like, oh, it's okay to keep expressing about this, which is very ironic for an author to have that issue. But if you can relate, I think that a lot of people probably struggle with this, and I definitely do. So you're not alone in that, of just feeling like it's hard to express, even if you've published something that is a work of self-expression in some way. Like, this isn't my story, but I'm having to write it. So of course there's a lot in there that I'm trying to share. That can be really hard when it's slowly becoming reality. Even before I published it, I was like, oh my god, it wasn't just like, is this too much? It's like, are people going to think I'm copying things that are happening? But like, what if I was? What if I wanted to write about a fictional version of things that are happening that are stressful? Like, I think that's okay too. And like, why am I any different? Like, the assumption that I can impact someone way worse than anything else that has been written just because I'm writing about something realistic, that's what I mean by saying, like, maybe that's a little putting myself on too big of a pedestal. Like, I can't really control that. And I'm not like the exception here. I'm sure, like some other people, the reason why I wrote this is because it felt cathartic, and it's hopefully cathartic to someone else. Anyway, it was hard for me to publish this in the first place because I had one of those bad rejections. I talked about this a little bit on social media, so you may have seen a quick recap of how I explained what happened, but I had tried to query this book to literary agents. I didn't really query that many literary agents, but by the time I went to Rose City Comic Con in 2023, I ran into a small press of some sort. I'm not going to name names, and by the way, they have their own opinions and they're allowed to reject me. I'm fine with rejection in that sense. Like, I had gotten some ahead of time. So this wasn't new. It was the way that they said it that hit something that applies to this topic. Because, let me read it to you. Okay, it says, "Thank you for submitting Soul Survivors to blank, to their publishing house, for consideration. Unfortunately, after reading your manuscript, we have decided to pass," which is fine. I was very fine with that and normal, like I said. But they wrote something custom, and let me read it. "In this case, the content of Soul Survivors was not a good fit for our press." Also fine. "We felt that the acts forced on Nico, even though it was fade to black, would be too triggering and dark for readers. It would also be troubling for our editing staff. We wish you the best of luck with finding home for Soul Survivors and your publishing journey." So, just to unpack that, this wasn't a normal rejection compared to the other ones it had gotten, and it really struck home because of two things. One, I wrote this story where it does fade to black a lot in the actual acts of violence, and part of that that's written on the back cover is that Nico is trapped in an abusive situation from an authority figure within this military cult that they're raised in, and he is basically being blackmailed into the situation from childhood onward. And a lot of different types of sexual assault are a huge problem in many different communities, absolutely including military spaces. And I don't think that this is something to shy away from, so I wrote about the emotion side of it. I feel like the most that gets depicted is that Nico does have this horrible doom feeling and he feels really trapped, and I did work hard at showing how that feels, because I feel like the purpose of books is to understand each other, put ourselves in each other's shoes. I'm putting the focus on him and not on the villain of this story, which is in part that authority figure, because I feel like Nico's perspective is the perspective that gets silenced. And when I was reading this, it read to me that they're saying is too triggering and dark for readers, period. All readers, in their opinion. When the purpose isn't, like, okay, it feels like to me, like, okay, when are we going to be allowed to talk about what survivors go through, rather than just constantly blaming it on them for being too fill in the blank? Because it's always about, what were they wearing? What did they do to make this happen? Why didn't they leave? Things like that. So this was very upsetting to me on a deeper level, because it kind of spoke not just with this publishing house, but I do this a lot where I think about the bigger picture. I'm like, this is representative to me of a societal issue where things are swept under the rug, and a lot of that stems from other things I'm researching, like in the 1619 Project. Absolutely recommend this book. It has like actual uncensored history of how the United States came to be in a very violent way, and it is nonfiction that I feel like, because we haven't heard about some of these things happening, it does tend to get into that territory where people start to feel like, oh, this is too much. But what happens when these things happen to us? Are we going to be too much for talking about it? That's kind of how I feel. What's funny about that is that I've been talking to you this whole video about how I have been silencing myself in the same way, kind of repeating these sentiments towards myself, because I feel like my book is too much, even though I care about what it's about. The message that I was trying to share through this book, I do feel like is important. And who knows, if I did publish it sooner, finish it sooner, obviously it had to go through its stages in order to get here. I didn't publish it for 10 years because of that, but I think that I could have done a deeper dive into it sooner, but I kind of held on to it after this rejection because I let it get to me in a way that I don't I don't think I would want to if I were someone else looking at me and giving me advice. So, to anyone out there, if you feel like your story is too much because you're sharing a perspective that is either silenced or is out of the norm because you just feel like a weirdo for having problems, even if they're problems that were forced on you, whether that's physically or just metaphorically, I encourage you to still go out there and do that. While I still don't have the answers on how I'm going to solve this issue of getting myself to be more comfortable with sharing, at least I did finally get myself to publish this, and at least some people, even if it's just a few people, and it did get drowned out by real world events that are happening, I feel like at least some people were impacted in a good way and felt heard by that. And I think that's all that I could ask and hope for when publishing something like this. So I hope that that helps you too, and if you needed a little like gentle nudge in the right direction, that you go for it. We can talk more in more videos about the actual content that feels predictive about this, if that's something that you're interested in. So definitely comment down below if you can relate to any of this, or if you'd like me to chat about any specific aspect of these things. Also, if for some weird reason that publishing house somehow watches this, I don't know what their actual stance is on these things. I could absolutely be misreading them, so I wouldn't wish any harm on them. This wasn't a good fit, and that's okay. I don't want them to publish something that they don't have their heart behind, because that wouldn't be good for any of us. And I replied being like, thanks for your feedback. I wish you the absolute best, and that's true. So I hope that if you get any rejections that you keep going and don't take it to heart in the same way. Of course, continue to do your due diligence and make sure to share messages that you feel are needed, while also making sure that you're taking care of the groups that you're discussing and not accidentally piling onto the harm that it's caused to them, whether it's intentional or not. So I hope you're having a great day. This is like a different style video. I'm not really sure what to make of it, but I wanted to share my honest thoughts of where I'm at before we're done with this read through. We're going to be finishing Soul Survivors by Halloween, and it is actually a very fast read because it is a thriller and it's nerve-wracking, and you just keep wanting to read and seeing what happens next. So you probably could finish this in just a couple days if you want to catch up and join us. We are chatting about it on my Discord channel. I am going to get myself to post more, so if you want to comment your thoughts on that, come say hi. I will reply to you on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you see it. But I hope that you're having a good day. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Bye for now. Oh no, I can't reach. I can't do my outro. Darn.